Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for choosing to be here with me today. Welcome back if you've been here before, and welcome if you're new here. Today, we're talking about the phrase, if they wanted to, they would, when that applies and when that does not apply. Okay, so this is like all things in life. Most things in life will say there are times when this sentiment applies to something and times when it doesn't. If you've never heard this phrase before, if they wanted to, they would basically means that if someone wanted to do something for you, then they would. And if they're not doing it, then that means that they don't care enough about you, or you're not worth it, or they don't love you enough, or something like this, right? So the idea is we don't need to convince people to do things for us. We don't need to beg people to do things to show us they love and care about us. And if we are doing that, then, if someone is not giving us love and care and support freely, then they don't actually want to be doing that. And for me, it makes sense in that way. But like I said before, there are times where this applies and times where it doesn't apply. So what we can see here with this phrase, like a lot of advice or situations or guidance, is they're applied to situations that don't really make sense. And there needs to be kind of like some nuance and grace and understanding of figuring out when this does apply and when it doesn't. And also, as a reminder, this applies to all relationships in your life, okay, not just romantic. It definitely, most of us have a lot of wounding in romantic relationships, so that's where we can, maybe need to have more strict boundaries or get more clear with certain things. But this video and the things I'm going to talk about can apply to all of the relationships in our life. So it can be with your friends, your family, your coworkers, anyone who you have a relationship with. And again, just want to clarify, sometimes this does apply, sometimes it doesn't. Like all things in life, context matters. Okay, so looking at your particular situation and trying to figure it out from there. Okay, so some examples of when this does apply. Okay, so if they wanted to, they would. This can be a reminder that if you have like this chronic feeling, right? A lot of times when there's a chronic feeling, when there's a pattern, when there's something that's been going on and on and on and on, right? That's when we kind of need to turn inward and be like, okay, what's going on, right? So if there's perpetual disappointment, lots and lots of excusing things, or not feeling, if like you don't feel any reciprocal care, or you're pouring so much into this person, you feel like you're getting nothing back, right? So this can be a time when it does apply for that, right? If it's just like, if they wanted to, they would. This is someone who you feel disappointed with over and over and over again. You've communicated, you've done your work, you're not projecting, you've turned inward, you've been reflective on what you've been putting into the situation, right? But you just still have this chronic feeling, this like perpetual disappointment. There's this pattern of like, you can never feel cared for or seen or heard, or like it's just something's just like off and missing. And so a question, you can ask yourself is, do I feel cared for? Is, like I said, am I pouring all this in and then I just don't feel like I'm getting anything back, right? But part of this, for when it does apply, you do want to do your own work, and you want to make sure that you don't have an old wound that's being triggered and that like you're taking out on this person, right? So maybe they said an exact phrase that someone from your past who, wasn't the best fit for you said, and it like really, sent you into this thing. So am I being triggered? No. Okay. Is a situation where I need to give them grace? No. And then also, how would I want to be treated if the roles were reversed, right? So again, we're not talking about here of like someone who made an honest mistake, forgot to do something, but they have this pattern and you've built this rapport and trust with them over time. And this is just like a one-off or a one-time thing that happened. Or maybe, they're going through something in their life that's, really it's taking up a lot of their emotional mental capacity, and there just isn't space for that much reciprocity like before, right? So again, it's just looking about this phrase can apply when, again, it's more of like a chronic feeling. You kind of know in your gut, you kind of shut down, you don't feel as emotionally open, you don't feel super safe, you don't feel like, there's just a lot of things building up that lead to this, like if they wanted to, they would. It's just, again, it's usually, it's best, in my experience, to not, if there's one situation, right? Like depending on the situation, maybe, right? But it's good to notice if this is a pattern, if it's long-term, if it's, all of that. But also if you have non-negotiables and deal breakers, that if they do this one thing or don't do this one thing, then you're allowed to have those as well, right? But so just thinking about this can apply to situations where in general, if there is this chronic feeling of I'm putting so much into this, I'm giving and giving and giving, and there's just like nothing coming back for me. And it doesn't feel reciprocal, right? Relationships aren't about keeping score, like, okay, I did this, so you did this, but they are about reciprocity, and they are about energy that feels like I'm pouring in the same amount this person's pouring in, and we have the same level of care and concern for each other and thoughtfulness, right? So on the other side of that, I've talked about this a little bit and kind of in that answer, because again, you can't really pull these things apart totally separately, but when if they wanted to, they would does not apply. Sometimes people think this on like their first time they meet someone, right? So they're going on a date with someone and the person didn't dress in the exact way they wanted, or they didn't bring them, maybe they brought them flowers, but they didn't bring them like the exact specific flowers, right? So if it's something like very, very, very elaborate and specific, that's kind of just like an unrealistic expectation, which like, I'm not trying to say don't have expectations and boundaries and standards for yourself, but you do have to be clear, like if they wanted to, they would. You have to ask yourself, like, am I being fair? Am I letting what they're doing be enough? Are they putting in effort? Are they trying to correct something, right? But, sometimes people can say like, oh, well, this person didn't do this exact specific thing in my mind. Like I expect them to mind read what I wanted. And if you haven't had that conversation, if you haven't made that clear, then you have to turn inward and be like, okay, I wasn't being fair here. Like I didn't set up this, and this thing, right? So a lot of times, this doesn't apply if it's just like a one-off situation. If it's like immediate, right? You expect someone to be this like projection that you have instead of letting them show up as their full selves and you getting to know them and them getting to know you. And instead you think like, okay, they need to be this like checklist of what I want instead of their own individual person. And we learn how our relationship goes together instead of just like, you need to be this, and this thing for me, right? Sometimes we don't let what people do be enough. And that doesn't mean like, again, that you lower your standards or anything like that. But if you can see someone is putting effort in and they just like letting it be enough, what they can do with their means and their resources and their situation and, all this, like sometimes we can just hold people to these standards of things never being enough when it's like, okay, well, did they try? Did they put their effort in? Have they shown, like, again, the other side of this repeated pattern, right? Have they shown that they care about me? They're thoughtful of me. They're all of these things, right? A lot of people, when relationships fall apart, they say that, the relationship started to crumble because there were these big giant gestures, but there wasn't a lot of small, immediate day-to-day care and support and consistency in that way, right? So if you have these small things, okay, but if you have these like smaller things of like, is this person doing all these things? Then do they need to, have this big giant elaborate thing for me? And again, if you want that, great, totally do it for yourself, right? But sometimes we can get confused and we haven't done our own internal work and our own healing and our own turning inward. And we think, well, this person should just know exactly what I want and do it perfectly and have all these things and do all of this, right? Especially with social media now, it's really easy to get really envious of people who have different resources, different time, different money, different situations, and be like, oh, well, my person or my friend or my whatever isn't doing this for me, so they're not a good friend to me. And it's like, sometimes that's true, but you also have to ask yourself, like, is that true all the time? I don't know. Again, so just really, we have to like calm our own ego and we have to get out of our own way. And you really have to, ask yourself, like, am I being fair? If I did this for someone in my life and they just kind of like spit in my face about it, would I like that? Would that feel good? Like thinking about that. Because again, if someone is giving, you really have to think about if someone giving their best effort and it just might not match like the exact way, the exact thing you wanted it to do. You also have to say, like, do I have impossible standards and expectations? And I get it. Okay, we really, a lot of us have to build up what our standards are, what our boundaries are, all of that, right? But I'm talking about very specific instances where we are, we just choose to be disappointed by something because, let's say we went out to dinner and the person got me a surprise dinner and it was like this type of pasta instead of this type of pasta, right? I wanted this one, but they gave me this one. It's like, oh, they don't care about me. They should have known better. They should have whatever, right? If there's mind reading involved, incredibly elaborate, specific communicating, things that you didn't communicate, all that. So just kind of being really thoughtful and intentional and kind of looking at the situation for the context. Because as always, with both of these things, yourself better than I do, the answer for yourself better than I do, but it is worth turning inward and investigating case by case. You can journal, you can reflect, you can talk it out, see what comes up for you when you sit with this, and you turn inward for your own guidance and awareness. You can reflect about it, you can all of this, do all these things. But again, it's really thinking about if they wanted to, they would, sometimes definitely does apply and sometimes does not apply at all, right? There's just times where we may be wounded or stuck in our ego or feel entitled and we think, okay, well, they should have done this, this, and this for me. It's like, well, should they have, right? And then other times where we can excuse away behavior a lot when it's actually like, if they want it, if like this person doesn't care about me at all, but I'm telling myself they do because I don't know why. That's a whole nother video, right? Okay, but it is worth turning inward and getting clear with myself of just like, why do I need to excuse this behavior away versus just accepting someone's putting in minimal, no effort. So what's going on versus like, right, my friend just had a baby and I don't talk to them as much, but I need to keep, I'm the one that always reaches out. Well, it's like they're probably not ignoring you on purpose. They have a newborn, right? If you've ever had a child, you know how time consuming and exhausting and tiring that is. So again, like all things, think about the context of this. But again, sometimes if they wanted to, they would. Definitely does apply. Sometimes it does not apply at all. But again, use your own senses, use your own self-awareness, use your own reflection within yourself to figure out when it does apply for a time in your life and when it doesn't. Okay, that's everything I have for you. Thank you so much for choosing to be here with me today. If you ever want any more information about me, all that is linked below. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful day.